Welcome into the Inside Indiana Show. I'm Ken Bykoff along with Ed Magoni, and the Hoosiers opened this season with a 27-20 loss to Ball State at Lucas Oil Stadium in a game that was disappointing for a lot of different reasons. The defensive line didn't play very well. The offense didn't run the ball as well as I think that they hoped, and the passing game, which showed flashes, Ed, certainly it was productive, and yet it didn't produce anything but the one big play to DeMarlo Belcher. Your thoughts on the Hoosiers' performance at Lucas Oil?
Well, I think, as Kevin Wilson said after the game, and as most people would agree, the offensive and defensive lines just simply got pushed around by Ball State, which was shocking to me because last time we were sitting in these chairs, I said that I thought Indiana's offensive line would dominate the Cardinals' front four in the second half, and that would be the difference in the game. And obviously that was way off base because Ball State pushed Indiana's offensive line around, and a couple of times Edward Wright Baker dropped back, and the offensive line got pushed so far back he was bumping into his own offensive lineman. So that was shocking. And the way that Indiana's Ball State's offensive line handled Indiana's defensive line was also surprising because I figured Adam Replogle and Larry Black would be able to establish themselves on the inside and be tough to move around, but Ball State moved him right out of there and was averaging, close to 5 yards a carry in that game, and didn't have any problems when they're on their way to 210 yards.
For as important as that physical aspect of the lines comes into play, a lot of it had to do with the energy of the team, and it's an issue that Coach Wilson admitted he didn't notice during the game, but when watching tapes, he saw that the Hoosiers had a problem with their energy.
The real disappointing thing to me, which is totally my fault, I just didn't see from the sideline or on the field just any energy. I mean, it looked like we were at a golf match or something. So we've been trying to talk about having some fun, cranking it up. We've been working hard. We've talked about playing smart. We took care of the ball. We talked about not being bad in the kicking game. We didn't create anything. Some of the things we talked about we got, but we were a very lethargic team. So we'll work real hard to see, without being phony and being cheerleaders, we got to create our own energy. I think you get what you're going. We've been talking about we're playing hard and playing smart, and at the same time, it's still it's a game, so you need to have some fun. It's a passionate game. It's a game of energy and enthusiasm, and we didn't have it, and that starts with me. So again, we've talked a lot about that as a staff and how to try to create that without being phony and corny and all that stuff. But we got you need to the teams that play fast not only have team speed, but they're having excitement and fun. We got to find ways to create that as we go through the week of practice. We got to find ways to create that during the game. Of course, it's always easier when you're making plays, because then the more plays you make, the more chest bumps, the more the crowd's involved, you feed off everybody. And again, I don't know if we played as poorly as well as we didn't do well in the line scrimmage, and then we didn't make any plays other than DeMarlo's big play. We had a lot of great defensive plays, kicking game play. Well, I don't know if there's a lot of bad plays. It was just a very, very average games.
Well, of course, Kevin Wilson is making energy a point of emphasis for the team this week, and certainly it's going to be something that we're going to have to see how that team responds. I know for me, Ed, part of it was that just watching the game, I didn't notice the team's lack of energy, and I think that really shows some of the expectations of what fans have really come to expect from this football team. And yet, the Hoosiers, despite the problems, despite the loss, they did do some things right on the field. Edward Wright Baker threw for 272 yards. The running game showed some flashes, especially for some guys making their first college start. What kind of things did you see out of the Hoosiers that impressed you?
Well, I think the fact that Edward Wright Baker in his first start didn't throw an interception, completed close to 60% of his passes, and he was facing pretty stiff pressure in his face. He was sacked 5 times, hit numerous others, faced guys had guys rushing him pretty consistently throughout the game, and he still managed to be pretty productive. I mean, he hit DeMarlo Belcher for the long pass. His accuracy wasn't as sharp as it was in some of the practices we saw. He wasn't leading receivers quite as well, but that's to be expected, I think, with first live action, real legitimate live action football that he was playing in for the Hoosiers. And Matt Perez and Stevie Houston, they didn't blow anyone away, but certainly they had some nice carries when they got the blocking up front, which didn't happen very often. And they were able to get outside a little bit on that Ball State defense, which is kind of surprising given how the physical nature of both those guys. They were able to bounce a couple of those runs outside and still gained some good yardage, and they broke some arm tackles, which was nice to see. I also thought the Indiana secondary, although that Ball State had considerable success completing passes for a high percentage, didn't necessarily give up the big plays that we'd seen. They were fundamentally sound in their tackling, I thought, team-wide on defense. I mean, they didn't blow any tackles horribly, as we'd seen in the last couple of seasons where guys just whiffed or got run over. So there were some positives to build on for Kevin Wilson and his staff. I just think the overall lack of energy, like you said, and the offensive and defensive lines just need to step it up and be a little bit more stout, and we'll see what happens this week.
Well, the best part about it being a season-opening loss is the fact that there's at least 11 more games for the Hoosiers to play. Coming up next, we're going to take a look at their Week 2 matchup with Virginia with InsideIndiana.com's Zach Osterman. Welcome back into the Inside Indiana Show. I'm Ken Bykoff, and right now we're going to bring it InsideIndiana.com's Zach Osterman. And Zach, the Hoosiers' opponent in Week 2, the Virginia Cavaliers, they're a team that beat Indiana 47-7 back in 2009 in the only meeting between the two schools. Virginia handled William and Mary easily 40-3 last week. What are some of the challenges for the Hoosiers and some of the keys?
Yeah, I think Kevin Wilson, offensively, talking about Virginia, he used the term window dressing. The idea that they're going to do a lot of things offensively, a lot of movement and motion, maybe some weird personnel groupings and things like that, lots of shifts to kind of try and throw defenses off. But at the end of the day, what they try to do offensively is pretty basic, and it's a lot of power stuff. They ran for 240 yards against William and Mary. Freshman back, remind me of his name.
Kevin Parks.
Kevin Parks with over 100 yards for a true freshman, not bad. So it's really it looks sort of like those Virginia teams of the past. Thomas Jones, Virginia's always been a program that's produced good running backs and really good offensive linemen. So, I think offensively Indiana's actually going to have to, or defensively Indiana's going to have to do exactly what they struggled to do against Ball State, which is control the line of scrimmage, win at the point of attack, and then stop the run. And then defensively, it was kind of the opposite. Wilson told us that Virginia will come out in sort of a 4-3. That was a program that under Al Grove for years was in a 3-4, but now in their second year under Mike London, seems like they're more comfortable in the 4-3. It's a pretty basic defensive look, defensive setup, but they don't hesitate to be really aggressive out of that. They've got a couple good rush-ins along the line, really good a couple of playmakers in the secondary, so they don't hesitate to try and do some aggressive things, whether it's blitzes or maybe bringing a safety or something like that. So it's kind of a tale of opposites. Offensively, Indiana's going to have to handle a basic defense that's going to come at it in a lot of different ways, and then defensively they're going to have to maybe not get thrown by all the stuff that Virginia's trying to distract them with, and just win the basic man-on-man battles.
And winning the battle in the trenches is going to be key. And we already talked about Kevin Parks. Kevin Wilson certainly had a unique take on what the Hoosiers need to do to both stop the run and move the ball on the ground.
But really, running and stopping the run starts with a mindset and an attitude. And we're going to get off blocks and stop the run, and we're going to stay on blocks and have an attitude and run it up in there. And so that was talked about directly today in a very positive way, as a challenging way, that it's a mindset. For us to be well in our league, we can do all the spread, the shotgun, the no-huddle stuff, yes. You've got to have a physical presence. You got to run it. And that was disappointing in our plan, our preparation, and our execution to do those two things. So whether it be Virginia, whether it be anyone moving forward, for us to build our program and to have a chance to be successful, we can be wide open, we'll throw it. Ed did okay first start. We got nice receivers. Okay, yeah. We got to run the ball and stop the run. If not, you're going to die a slow death in college football. And so whether we got to put 12 people up there, butcher knives, and run the wishbone, you've got to run the football and you've got to stop the run, and we'll keep working it because we've got to. And we can have all the excuses, talk about stats and all that junk. In our league, this day and age, we got to do those things, and we're going to.
Of course, the Virginia game is going to be the Hoosiers' home opener, Zach, and certainly the Hoosiers don't want to open 0-2, but this is a game that, I mean, for being very early in the season, it feels like it's kind of got a must-win kind of feel to it.
It does in a way, and I think one thing that kind of hurt about Ball State is that a lot of Indiana fans are pretty familiar with Ball State, and no offense intended to that program, but it's one of fairly modest history itself. You think of when you think of the best teams maybe in the Midwest that aren't Big Ten teams, you think of Western Michigan, of Central Michigan, maybe at times of Marshall or Miami or Bowling Green. Ball State really has never enjoyed that consistent success. Their last winning season was 2008 when Brady Hoke was last there. They really struggled for the next couple of years, and they're in a pretty similar situation with Indiana to Indiana right now, breaking in a first-year head coach, a lot of youth. Doesn't seem like a team that's really maybe thinking about a bowl this year. So, losing that game really hurt. It maybe struck even a little bit more close to home for Indiana fans. So, yes, I think the Virginia game is a big game, and I think it's one that, certainly if they win, then it really helps. And I think that if you presented an Indiana fan with the reality of you're going to win one and lose one at the start, the first two games of your season, which would you rather win and which would you rather lose? They'd probably pick Virginia because that's got a little bit more shine to it, being an ACC program and a win over another BCS conference team. But, at the same time, you've got to win that game. And right now, I think it would be fair to say the Hoosiers look like underdogs based on what we saw last weekend, both from Indiana and from Virginia. And if you lose that game, all of a sudden, the Big Ten's still all, out ahead. And, you're 0-2 looking up with 10 games left in your schedule at potentially a pretty long season. The non-conference schedule has always been something that's been good to Indiana, at least in recent years. And all of a sudden, the best you can do in the non-conference is 500, and you've still got the whole Big Ten schedule.
The Hoosiers certainly hope to get the job done against Virginia on the football field, but when we get back, we'll take a look on the job Todd Yeagley's Hoosiers are doing on the soccer pitch. Welcome back into the Inside Indiana Show. I'm Ken Bykoff with Zach Osterman. And Zach, I know that you're a big soccer fan. The Hoosier soccer team is off to a good start. Just a little bit of an update on what Todd Yeagley's group has been doing.
Yeah, 2 wins and a draw in 3 games so far this season. Went to Notre Dame, played a 0-0 draw, went into 2 overtimes, maybe not as well as they could have played. Came back last weekend and won the Adidas IU Credit Union Classic. I always struggle with the full name there. I think for the first time since 2005. Beat St. Louis 3-1 on Friday night. That game featured 17 national titles between both programs, and then beat Dayton 6-0 on Sunday. Just a different kind of look from this team, and certainly, I don't think this is wholly unexpected. The Hoosiers did win the Big Ten last year, but it's a different kind of look from this team. There's more movement, there's more passing. Players are given license to be more creative. You see the fullbacks pushing up from defense and creating width, allowing midfielders to maybe make more runs in the box, which creates more space for other players. At the game, St. Louis game on Friday night, the 2 goals that they scored, they forced one own goal off a corner. The 2 goals that they scored, though, were both really good team goals. Good passing, good movement to sort of create space and find space and really kind of pull defenders around and make space for teammates as well. It's just a different sort of soccer than I think Indiana saw maybe in the last part of the last decade. And no slight to Mike Freitag there, but it just seems like Todd Yeagley and his staff are giving their players, giving their roster maybe a little bit more license to move around and to be more creative, to be a little bit more independent of whatever particular setup they come out in, whether it's a 4-4-2 or a 3-5-2 or anything like that. So
is that what's really kind of putting some new life into this program?
I think so in a way. Again, it just seems a little bit less rigid. It seems like responsibilities are defined to an extent, but there is also, again, sort of that authority, that autonomy to say, I've got space to go forward. I can make something happen here. Jacob Bush, who was a good example, defensive midfielder, starting two defensive midfielders kind of screening that back line. Bushu was clearly had a lot of license to go forward, even into the box, all the way into the box, really to play as more of a box-to-box midfielder, and created things, made some things happen. And again, it's just that allowance to say, if you get forward and you can pull a defender toward you, that creates more space for maybe an attacking midfielder or forward to slide in where that defender was, and then you give it to him and move. And it's kind of that pass and move sort of philosophy or system that I think really just, again, I think the word you used was life. They just look more vibrant, more creative. They seem to hum a little bit more, if you will. And both St. Louis and Dayton were good scores, certainly. They gave a cheap one back to St. Louis at the end of the first half that I know everyone was pretty displeased about. But they were both games that really Indiana controlled for the whole game, because that sort of pass and move philosophy, and it's not quite that, the sort of old English style soccer that you sometimes saw, but it's something a little bit similar. It allows you not just to create chances, but again, to just kind of control the pace of the game, to say, they controlled possession probably 60% to 40% against St. Louis. And again, it allowed them to dictate the pace of the game, and never allowed St. Louis to find any sort of attacking rhythm, never allowed St. Louis to get its own attack going, and sort of forced them to just kind of keep playing long balls into the box that were, for the most part, dealt with pretty easily.
Well, a lot of that freedom is going to keep the Hoosiers pretty unpredictable on the soccer pitch, but when we get back, we give our predictions for how the Hoosiers are going to fare against Virginia. Welcome back into the Inside Indiana show. Guys, before we leave, your thoughts on how Indiana is going to fare against Virginia?
Well, I hate to say it, but I just don't think Indiana's defensive front's going to be able to match up very well against Virginia's big offensive line. I think Cavaliers are going to run the ball effectively. It's going to set up the play-action passing, and it's going to be a matter of value trying to keep up, match them score for score, and I just don't think against Virginia's secondary, which has enough talent to take away Indiana's strength, which is their receivers, I just don't think IU can handle them. I think Virginia wins it in Bloomington.
Yeah, I think Virginia could win it. I don't think it's 47-7, but I wouldn't be surprised to see a 35-14. Indiana has to, in my eyes, has to prove that they can stop the run. That they can be maybe more, I don't want to say consistent, but just a little bit more fluid, a little bit more smooth on offense. And maybe they do those things against Virginia. It's still early. We've only seen this team play one game under a new coaching staff and with a lot of new personnel. But from what we know right now, I just think that Virginia's gonna be able to wear Indiana down. I think we could see a few long drives early. I think we could see Virginia winning comfortably. Again, maybe not 40 points, but wouldn't be surprised if it's by at least a couple touchdowns.
Yeah, considering the problems that Indiana had on both sides of the line against Ball State, I think they're going to run into a lot of the same struggles. Unless they really bounce back, play with a lot of energy, feed off the crowd, I think that the Hoosiers are going to end up opening the season 0-2. Well, that's all the time we have left on the Inside Indiana show. For Ed Magoni and Zach Osterman, I'm Ken Bykoff. Thanks for watching, and pace yourself.